Barbadians in Atlanta and from across the United States had their say at the final Overseas Constitutional Reform Commission Town Hall meeting held during the Barbados Comes to Atlanta event.
On June 20th, 2022, a Constitution Reform Commission was sworn in by the acting President of Barbados pursuant to the provisions of the Commissions of Inquiry Act as an advisory commission. I say advisory for reasons that at the end of the day, our commission is going to have to submit its report to Her Excellency, the President, for onward transmission to the executive. But our opinion is advisory, and it's for them to decide whether to accept the advice or part thereof or not. The warrant of appointment requires the Commission to consult with Barbadians both locally and abroad on what provisions they would like included in the Constitution for the Republic of Barbados. As a Commission, we are here to listen and hear what you want to say to us and take into account the views you want reflected in the Constitution. I shall tell you, however, that every proposal may not be appropriate for inclusion in the Constitution. That is necessary to be said, but however, I also say, if you say something to us that we think has significance that may require some alteration to the other substantive laws of the country, we commit to making that recommendation for consideration by the powers that be.
One of the main topics discussed was persons in the diaspora being able to vote in the country's general elections.
This is David Cunningham, the Honorary Consul for Barbados in Atlanta. I've been in that role since 2015. I consider myself to be a prodigal son of Barbados, having left at the age of 18 in 1970. So I've spent over 50 years in this country. I hear a lot of our diaspora asking this question, and I suspect that you would have had this question in some of the other consultations. And that is, the diaspora is constantly being asked to do more to help back home, and that's legitimate, that makes sense. However, the question is the diaspora's ability to vote in Barbados, and to what extent that is being considered in the Constitution. And I'm talking about people who are legitimately citizens of Barbados, who happen to live outside of Barbados, but would want to have at least the same amount of influence on who gets elected to represent Barbados as Prime Minister, for example. And I recognize that there's some logistical challenges to making that happen. But I think it is a legitimate concern, particularly since the diaspora is being asked to do more and more. So yes, we're happy to do more, but we would want to see to what extent we can have the ability to vote externally in elections in Barbados. Thank you.
Thus far in the consultations, we've seen that people in the diaspora want different things. Some people feel very strongly about having that direct right to vote in a constituency. Many of them don't have a constituency, as alluded to earlier. Some of you would have left before you were 18. So you wouldn't have been on a register at all. Some people do not have a constituency in which to vote. And when we consider the size of our constituencies in Barbados, and the fact that there are more Barbadians living outside of Barbados than in Barbados, you can see the implications that allowing the diaspora to vote in a constituency of 3,000 people, what that could do to the effects on the ground. The other thing is that we have to balance some of the requests. On the ground, I would say that we have an overwhelming sentiment that the diaspora should not be allowed to vote in general elections. Overwhelmingly, that's how people that live in Barbados feel. They feel that they're the ones that have to live with the consequences of the elections. And therefore, what we've heard that has received a little bit more support from people that live in Barbados is the idea of having a diaspora representative. And if you have a diaspora representative, is one representative enough? And is the diaspora in the UK? Do they want the same things as the diaspora in the US and in Canada? And what about those regions which don't have traditionally large Barbadian populations, but they're still part of the diaspora? So it's a very complex issue.
My name is Shamara Calendar. Um, my response is not really a new question, but more of a suggestion slash more in agreement with Ms. Gemma. I believe that all Barbadians in diaspora, I don't necessarily think that they should be allowed the right to vote in the Barbados general election because, as stated, they do not necessarily have to live with the consequences of the vote or the results of the election on a day-to-day basis, which, as you said, is the general consensus in Barbados. I'm a Barbadian citizen by descent. I do have a lot of ties in Barbados, and I regularly, frequently travel there. But I believe that, well, I am affected more often than some that don't travel as regularly by what goes on in Barbados, say the cost of living, etc. I don't necessarily think that I should have the right to vote there. But I do have a voice and opinions on the legislation that is presented there. I feel as though we should have, similar to how Puerto Rico as a U.S. territory has a member, what they call the resident commissioner, that has congressional power, but they don't vote. They don't vote on congressional legislation, but they do have a voice. So they can contribute opinions they're voted in by the residents of Puerto Rico. And I feel like that is probably the best suggestion or solution to what we have. As you said, the Barbadian diaspora is vast. There's the UK, there's Canada, there's Toronto, and there's also other countries around the world that may be smaller. I think that maybe if there's a representative for each major portion of the diaspora, so say North America can have one, which would consist of the Canada, America, and that would be a case where they have a meeting, maybe if they have a subsection where the diaspora in Canada and the diaspora in the US, they can convene and come up with whatever their major contributions or issues that they want to present to the island.
My name is Frank Durant. Like Mr. Cuddy, I've been out of the country for over 50 years. But I was listening to the lady talk about voting and different things like that. And my thing is that if you're talking about asking the diaspora to help you, then I think that the people in that diaspora should have a right in voting. I think you're asking us to do a lot, and as a Barbadian myself, I'm one of those that would give my life for Barbados. You understand? So my thing is that being in the diaspora, and we are putting ourselves in that position to support Barbados from here, I think that we should be given a chance to vote.
Hi, good afternoon. My name is Donna Hope. I'm not making a suggestion for change. I'm just bringing a perspective for someone who has not left Barbados 50 years ago. I left Barbados 5 years ago, and I admit I waited to move to the U.S. because I wanted to vote in the 2018 election. I was on the ground. I felt I could make a difference, and I followed the issues, and I felt that the decision that I would make would be one that friends, family, co-workers, member of my church could live with the decision that I made as a voter. Now, take the last election. I could say that I could go home and vote. Yes, I pay taxes in Barbados. I work for a Barbadian company. I felt maybe I could have made a contribution. However, you follow what's going on in the news. Being on the ground and having to live with that decision makes a big difference. I don't think in the last election, because I had been gone then for 4 years, that I should have made that decision. I am not there. I am going in to visit. I see things, yes, that I know that are a concern to me. But there are Barbadians who are resident there who have to live with these decisions every day. I understand, I know a lot of the diaspora, yes, feel that, yes, they should be able to vote. But as the panel is rightfully saying, we can manipulate those elections in such a way that we are, yes, somewhat involved, but we are far removed from that. So yes, I understand people saying if they own property and all that. Yes, I have all of that as well. But am I on the ground? Do I see the day-to-day impact? No. So I know it would be nice to vote, but from some person, like I said, who's only been here 5 years, you've got to, at this point, do not think that I would necessarily go and cast my ex because of that. So I mean, we have to think. I'm thinking to have the diaspora representative. Maybe we might have 3 candidates that we vote for and have them represent us.
Some of the topics highlighted included laws regarding the rights of children, parents, and sexuality, checks and balances on how the Barbados Constitution would be constructed, public sector reform, a clear outline as it relates to the power of the Prime Minister and the President, among others.
My question to Commission is, in drafting your recommendations, I know that Barbados, because of the state of the economy in 2018 and 2019 and COVID, that there have been several loans that have been obtained by the government. And with any loan, and we know neo-economic colonial fringes that come with that, there may be some stipulations. Or are there any international treaties that Barbados has signed onto that will be persuasive in the makeup of the Constitution with regards to human rights, same-sex unions, in terms of the environment as well? So are there any international treaties, or are there any other stipulations in regards to the financial relationships and relations that we have entered into that will influence the nature of the Constitution recommendations that you'll be offering to the government?
Good morning, I'm Janice Bispham and I'm visiting from Florida. I have never voted in Barbados. Like a lot of people here, I came to the United States very young and became an American citizen very young, and have always voted in America. So of course my frame of reference is 4-year terms. So that's that's in my head, that terms need to be 4 years, given that every 4 years it does not always give the governing body time to do or bring to a good conclusion or a fruitful conclusion what needs to be done, but they are allocated another 4 years if the electorate feels that they should be elected again. So for me, I say 4 years, with elections every 4 years, if you do the job that the citizens want, then you'll be elected for an additional 4 years.
But you have elections every 2 years in the United States.
Okay,
You have a presidential election every 4 years.
Presidential elections are every 4 years, and then local government is every 2 years. Right. You are correct. And unfortunately, in the United States, people don't always go to that 2-year election. So what happens is the people that's really making the laws and doing what needs to be done is every 2 years, but we don't always effectively vote in those elections. So I will stand corrected. Perhaps, with the citizens of Barbados might consider that same structure, but I do say that the heads, the president and the prime minister, should probably be given that 4-year term to see whatever they propose to the citizens, that they're able to see that. Because speaking from organizations, regular organizations, people tend to get upset and vote people out and put somebody in that they think is their friend or whatever, because elections happen so frequently and it's not always effective. So I say the longer the term, and for me not to exceed 4 years for a president or a prime minister would be, but I will concede that maybe we could look at that 2-year term for local government.
Good morning. My name is Rosalind Seeley. I'm from Florida. And I represent Beach of Etna. Yes. I actually left Barbados in 1979, and I was like 17 years old. And in reference to voting, I'm not going to go there. However, the deputy chairperson did address my concern, and my concern is the appointment of senators. We have, obviously we have member of parliament who are elected, but they also have senators, and you do have a title called senator. In my opinion, I think that that should be an elected position, and that should be placed in the Constitution has when it's election time, whether it's, and I know over here we have it every 2 years, but Barbados being a small nation, that could happen whenever it's election. Also, another concern is that the Prime Minister, I don't think should have enough power where they can call elections whenever they do fit them. Because when we know that when things are going well, you can call elections so you can get another 4 years. But if we had a date set like they are here, whether it's going good or bad, you just face the consequences. So therefore, I think in the Constitution, the senators should be elected, the Prime Minister should have a term limit, and should not be allowed to call elections when they do fit. Also, in reference to the president, before the president was, before we became a republic, the position that the president do hold was the Governor General. In the Constitution, there are provisions for the Governor General. Are there going to be provisions in the Constitution to address the president? And also, how will the president be appointed, elected? How will they get to that position? Because in due respect, the president of Barbados do have a lot of power. They do. That title, whether it's a man or a female, they do have a lot of power. So I just need to know that us Barbadians, whether here or at home, that the office of the president is elected by the people of Barbados.
Prior to the town hall meeting in Atlanta, members of the Constitutional Reform Commission engaged with Barbadians in the United Kingdom, New York, Boston, and Toronto. The feedback gathered will go a long way in shaping a dynamic constitution that represents and steers a 21st century Barbados.